After being bombarded with question after question during an interview, the last thing most job candidates want to do is have to think of intelligent questions to then turn around and ask the interviewer. You may feel you already know everything necessary about the company. If you've been at the organization for a day-long or sometimes even a multi-day interview, you've probably met a lot of people and had similar conversations over and over again. You might feel every possible topic has been covered, yet you can't leave without asking a few questions. Otherwise, you risk looking complacent and unenthusiastic. Stay tuned to learn some of the best questions to ask when your interviewer turns the tables and says, "Now, what questions do you have for us?" For the best job search and career advice, please hit the subscribe button below. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday. Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Kelly, a career coach and professional development specialist. I've spent the last 2 decades mentoring job seekers through the application process. Today, I'm going to give you some advice regarding how to respond when asked that uncomfortable question at the end of the interview, "Do you have any questions for us?" I've worked with thousands of job seekers, and the advice I'm going to give you today has helped many of them pose questions to interviewers to better understand the role for which they're being considered, to showcase their excitement for the position, and to clear up any concerns they might have. When it comes time for you to ask the interview questions, there are several things to keep in mind. First of all, you have to ask something. Otherwise, you might appear disinterested in the job. Secondly, if you can't think for yourself and come up with a few good questions, it may leave a bad impression, so all that good work you did during the interview was wasted. The other thing that is important to remember is that an interview is not a one-way street. Yes, the company decides whether they want to hire you, but you can always say no. When given the opportunity to ask questions, do it. Make sure this really is a job you want and a company you could see yourself working for. Take the time to ask your questions and make sure you really know what you're getting into. Ultimately, you need to decide what is most important to you and what you need to know to make a decision. But if you're struggling to think of some questions, here are some ideas. These questions show hiring managers you are thoughtful and interested in the position, but they will also help you decide whether or not the job is the right fit for you. Hopefully this has already been covered at some point in the interview, but if it hasn't been made obvious, you can always ask the question, what is the company culture? Other variations of this question might be, how do employees interact with one another? Is there a sense of community here? What does that community look like? In other words, do people work well together, but social interactions are limited? Or do colleagues get together from time to time outside of work hours? I always ask, what direction is the company going in? Related to that, do you foresee any significant changes to management in the near future? In theory, organizations should have long-term plans detailing succession and upcoming major projects. But keep in mind, nothing is written in stone. I once asked the person interviewing me. Now, this individual was going to be my new boss. I asked him this question. I probably should have been much more direct and said, "How long do you expect to be my direct supervisor?" Between the time I accepted the position and when I started the job a month later, he had been promoted to another department, and I never once saw him. It turned out no succession plan had been put in place either, because over the next 2 years, I had 4 different supervisors cycle through. This is not an ideal scenario, so if you can get a grasp on whether this situation is likely to happen to you, it helps. A few other questions to consider asking are, what is your management style? This gives you an idea of whether you should expect to be micromanaged and get the boss's blessing for every task you do. It will also tell you if you're expected to be pretty self-sufficient and only consult the supervisor when you have a problem. Going along with this question, we know we are in a world that has changed a lot recently. More and more positions are going remote, so you can ask about that. Certain positions can't be remote, so if you're applying to be a train conductor, probably don't bother asking this question. But if you work in a call center or some other office-based job, it's reasonable to ask whether the manager works from the office each day. Same thing with colleagues. Now, I don't suggest asking if you can work from home right away. In most cases, the answer will be no. But it's good to get an idea of how many of your colleagues are in-house regularly and whether you can expect to see your supervisor working in the office or not, because this really affects things like team camaraderie and communication. This is just something to be aware of. It's also reasonable to ask about what type of training you should expect to receive when you are being onboarded, as well as continuing training over the next several years. It's good to ask about turnover. This indicates whether people like working there enough to stay for a while. And it also clarifies whether you'll have someone to turn to that actually knows what they're doing when you have questions. And to make a personal connection with the interview, you can always ask, what do you like best about working here? If the response is a bit stiff, that tells you a lot. Someone who loves their job and the company and the environment they work in generally has a lot to say, and this can also really help build a positive rapport between you and the interviewer. Finally, if they haven't offered to tell you already, you can ask the next steps in the hiring process and what the timeline is for their decision making. This will let you know whether you should expect another round of interviews, and if you have other offers and need to get a response to those organizations soon, this can let this employer know that they need to move quickly if they want you. I hope these suggestions give you some good ideas for questions to ask at the end of an interview. If you would like more information about how to prepare for job interviews, along with a list of the most commonly asked interview questions, there is a link to an interview guide I've written in the description box below. Also, if you're interested in joining a community of job seekers like yourself, I have a Facebook group where I share advice related to all aspects of the job search process and career development. You can also join that Facebook group in the link below. If you like this video, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and share it with your friends. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.